Hello aspirants, we discussed in the earlier video as to what sources you have to study and how to approach economy in general. Now, the problem in economy is that we don't have a single source which can comprehensively cover economy. And therefore, the dynamic part or the nature of this exam is so wide enough that questions can be lifted from anywhere. And therefore, the problem is that sometimes aspirants tend to research so much and go outside the view of this UPSC or what the UPSC demands. And therefore, we have done an analysis of the last 9 years of UPSC, and if we do so, we can find that there are certain themes in which questions are often repeated and recurring. From this, we can understand that this is where the emphasis is when it comes to economy. Therefore, I'm going to list you out certain topics in which you have to give so much focus. The first topic will be monetary policy. So in this period between 2014 to 22, if you look at the number of economic questions, it comes to around 130 plus questions, out of which the greatest number of topics have been taken from monetary policy. So monetary policy and inflation is a topic that you need to give so much focus to. So let's take the case, say some questions have been lifted from money, banking concepts have been asked. For example, they've asked about money multiplier, the monetary policy committee, about inflation, as to who calculates inflation, what is the trend of inflation. So these are concepts which you need to focus. Coming to the second important topic is the banking system. Within this banking system, they have lifted so much questions within the organizational and the functional nature of RBI. They've asked about how it is instituted, what are the powers of RBI? What is the nature of RBI? These kind of questions have been recurring very often, and therefore give importance to RBI in particular and banking system in general. For example, you can find that they've lifted questions with regard to the reforms of banks. In the core banking solution, they've asked a question. Regarding payment banks, they've asked a question. Small finance banks, they've asked a question. Likewise, even last year, there was a question on cooperative banks. So most of the structure of banks, they've been asking questions. So this is the second area in which you have to give importance. The first being monetary policy. The third point that I want to emphasize is regarding this financial system. This is the third theme. Within this theme, you can find that there are questions which are related to bond. What kind of bonds? Okay, so they have been asking about government security, private securities, what kind of instruments are being issued. All these questions have been a recurrent theme in UPSC. So about these instruments, and recently you can find that they are not just asking about the instruments, they are asking about the methods, the procedures in which these instruments are being issued. Sometimes they go a layer deep into asking what is the technology that backs the issue of these securities. Tricky terms in financial systems are also being asked as questions. You can find that you need to be very beware of these terms, because if you do not know clearly these terms, it would be better for you to skip these kind of questions. For example, there was a question which asked about interest coverage ratio. You may not be aware of that, and therefore if there are two statements, if you cannot make a correlation, it's better to avoid these kind of terms. Financial awareness in general, they will be asking. For example, about UPI, about payment systems, about NBFCs, about capital markets, there have been many questions. So these are areas that you need to give the third most priority. Coming to the next area is the external sector. When it comes to external sector, you need to be aware that there has been trend-based questions as to how the trade composition of India has changed. What is the biggest item that we trade in terms of exports, in terms of imports, all these kind of questions they've been asking. Sometimes they are also bringing into picture some other countries as well. Example, last year in 2021, there was a question regarding the export nature of Vietnam. So there can be any questions regarding global trade. So beware of that. Import cover, rupee concepts. How will appreciation happen? What will happen on the onset of devaluation or depreciation? These kind of questions you can go through if you look at the previous year questions. So this is the next topic that you need to give importance. The other topic is fiscal policy. So regarding fiscal policy, they have been asking within this FRBM itself, they've been asking 2 questions year after the year. So GST, what are the products which comes under GST? What is the rates of GST? What are the trends in the parameters regarding fiscal deficit, regarding revenue deficit? All these questions have been asked. This is a very static area that you need to go through, and for this, to understand this trend, you need to read a little bit on the budget and survey. So this can help you. Now, in this flow, we are going to the next topic which we can identify in UPSC pattern, that is from agriculture. So industries, agriculture, socio-economic development, for example, regarding poverty, unemployment, all of these questions also they have been asking. But if you look at the numbers, they will be very minimal. And therefore, you can manage these kind of questions if you just read through some common books. For example, even the NCERT Standard 11 book will help. Or else you can just read certain social infrastructure related data of the government and it can help you, right? So coming to the overall nature of this UPSC, especially in economy, you can find that there is an adequate mix of both dynamism and static portions. Both the current topics will be lifted as well as the static portion. But I will emphasize that you need to give more importance to the static part. Without understanding static part, you cannot manage the current topics, and therefore you have to deftly balance between these 2 areas. No need to go into volumes and volumes of economic data or magazines and all specifically to understand current issues. You need to focus on static area, and then you can find that you are able to manage many questions in economy. So these are the focus area, and kindly give attention to it, and if you carefully prepare for this, you can easily tackle these economic questions. Thank you.